Hello everybody. You ready to get started? Yes. I want to personally welcome you all to this evening's event. My name is Carlene Arning-Pate. I am the Chief Revenue Officer for Sonoma Media Investments. We are the locally owned media company that brings you a variety of different sites and publications. Let's see if I can get them all in. Press Democrat, yes. Petaluma Argus Courier, Sonoma Index Tribune, North Bay Business Journal, the Sonoma County Gazette, beautiful Sonoma Magazine, and I've forgotten one more. Anybody know what it is? La Prensa, Sonoma County La Prensa. So I'm really excited to feel the energy of the room and the lawn. Hello out there. Thank you for joining us. I hope you all arrived a little bit early and got to go outside and enjoy some of the businesses and organizations that are supporting us here tonight as well. I have some folks who are going to join me up on the stage, and I want to introduce them. They're going to join me and share an important message. Please welcome Yana Ross, Lori Leigh-Wa Thomas, Yaquez Brown, and Carrie Potter. Thanks for joining me. Yana Ross and Lori Leigh-Wa Thomas are going to be doing the land acknowledgement, but I'd like to share a little bit of information about them. Yana Ross is an enrolled citizen of the Federated Indians of Grayton Rancheria, and she is the chair of their Sacred Sites Protection Committee. She is a natural resources and art studio major at Santa Rosa Junior College, where she is the president of the Intertribal Student Union and secretary for the newly formed student chapter of the American Indian Science and Engineering Society. That's a mouthful. Lori Leigh-Wa Thomas is an enrolled citizen of the Hopland Band of Pomo Indians with Pomo, Coast Miwok, and Huk-Num ancestry. She is the first local Indian to be hired as a Native American Studies tenure track instructor at Santa Rosa Junior College. And let me say, that is the first in a 105-year history of the school. And she is the mentor for Native American Studies and faculty advisor for the Native Students Clubs. And they are here to give us a brief land acknowledgement.
Thank you. Good evening. In the spirit of community, we acknowledge that Sonoma County is home to many tribal nations, including Kashaya-Pomo on the north coast, and in the North Inland is Dry Creek Pomo, Lytton Pomo, and Cloverdale Pomo. To the east, Mishawah-Wapo, and my tribe as well, the Federated Indians of Grayton Rancheria, which is comprised of Southern Pomo and Coast Miwok people, whose ancestral territory spans Sonoma County and the entirety of Marin County. We have been the stewards and caretakers of these lands since time immemorial. We have survived through local genocide and a legacy of colonialism. Today, we remain as a living tribe that is affecting positive change for our Native and non-Native communities alike through our mission of social justice, cultural revitalization, and environmental stewardship. We recognize that Sonoma State University has benefited and continues to benefit from the use of this land and its holdings. Consistent with our values, we are committed to strengthening our working relationship. By offering this land acknowledgement, we recognize, support, and advocate for all tribal sovereignty and will continue to hold SSU more accountable to the educational needs of local First Nations and Indigenous people.
We also acknowledge that our honored guest tonight, Colonel Nicole Mann, is of Wailaki heritage and a citizen of Round Valley Indian tribes from Covelo, who are comprised of Wailaki, Nomalaki, Yuki, Little Lake, Concow, Pomo, and Pit River peoples. Many California natives today are the survivors from the countless natives forcefully removed and relocated to Round Valley. We celebrate our collective survivance, a new word created to mark our survival and resiliency today. Yahweh, thank you.
Thank you. I forgot to mention we have 2 students also joining us from the student clubs. Yaquez Brown is an engineering major, and he's treasurer of our ACES Club, American Indian Science and Engineering Society. And Carrie Brown is a graphic artist and a psychology major as well. Thank you. I said her name wrong. It's Carrie Potter. I'm sorry. Thank you for correcting me. Sorry.
Important words. So we have been doing Women in Conversation series for 8 years now. And throughout those 8 years, we have introduced our community to so many amazing women who have so many interesting and empowering stories to share with us. And year after year, I can tell you that I have been personally inspired by these incredible women that we've invited to the stage. How many of you have attended any of our events in the past? Ah, awesome. So you know what I mean. It's really a feeling of power and positivity and possibility. So thanks again for joining us. This evening is very, very special to us because we get to welcome back home to Sonoma, our very own NASA astronaut, Nicole Mann. I have to tell you a quick story. We started working on bringing Nicole here when she was still in space, and actually, one of our past attendees, who is a friend of mine, mentioned her to me before she had even gone into space and made any news. She said, "Carlene, there is this woman, she's from Sonoma County, you need to research her, she would be a great guest." And so, early dialogue was just really interesting because we started trying to reach out to Nicole, and lo and behold, she was already in space. And we had no way of knowing how to even reach NASA to ask these questions. So my poor events director, Brandel McIntosh, who put this with her team together, an amazing job. She started Googling NASA numbers and just wildly calling and saying, you know, we do this women event, and we'd really love to have Nicole Mann join us. And she was leaving messages throughout NASA, the organization. Months went by, and finally an employee got back to us, and kid you not, she said, "I'm sorry, Nicole is in space right now, and you will need to wait until she returns, until she returns to Earth and has a minute to check her schedule, and we'll get back to you." So we were really patient, and we're really thrilled and fortunate that we get to bring her here for this community event. Our heartfelt gratitude goes to our presenting and founding sponsor, Summit State Bank. They have been with us from the very beginning. Their collaborative efforts have helped to shape the program, and their consistent financial support, it really has been critical to the ongoing success. So if my folks from Summit are in this room here and not out in the lawn, can you please stand up? Come on. Deep appreciation also extended to our supporting partner. You know the name very well. It's Kaiser Permanente. And I think I have a few folks from Kaiser here. Would you like to stand up? Ah, there they are. Thank you, Kaiser. Our contributing partner, our favorite place to shop and celebrating their 35th year anniversary is Oliver's Market. There's a couple of folks here from Oliver's. And our community inclusion partner, Healdsburg Lumber Company. So thank you. I know it sounds like a cliche, but it is so sincere when I say your support of these companies are really important, because without their support of incredible events like today's, we wouldn't be able to do it. So thank you. Okay, to set the stage and introduce us to Nicole, I would like to welcome this evening Belinda Guadarrama. She is the president and CEO of GC Micro Corporation. She is a board member of Summit State Bank, and get this, she is a recipient of the NASA Public Service Award. So let's introduce Belinda to the stage, and she's going to help us get started with Nicole.
I am so honored to be here today and to welcome Colonel Nicole Mann, our own Petaluma-born astronaut and a graduate from Rancho Cotati High School here in Rohnert Park. I am so impressed with Colonel Mann's extensive educational and training background. In 1999, Colonel Mann earned a Bachelor of Science in Medical Engineering from the United States Naval Academy. She then, in 2001, earned a Master of Science in Medical Engineering from Stanford University, specializing in fluid mechanics. Most of us have no idea what that even is. In 2009, she graduated from the U.S. Naval Test Pilot School in Maryland. Colonel Mann has served as a combat fighter pilot and test pilot on the FA-18 Hornet and Super Hornet aircrafts. Nicole has also deployed twice aboard aircraft carriers in support of combat operations in Iraq and Afghanistan. Now, all of that is already so impressive, but wait, there's more. So in June of 2013, Colonel Mann was selected to join the 21st NASA astronaut class. Her astronaut candidate training included extensive training on the ISS systems, spacewalks, Russian language training, robotics, physiological training, and water and wilderness survival training. That covers just about everything. On October 5th, 2022, Colonel Mann launched to the International Space Station as the commander of NASA's SpaceX Crew 5 mission aboard the SpaceX Crew Dragon spacecraft. The international crew of 4 lived and worked aboard the International Space Station in orbit for 157 days, almost 6 months. During that time, Nicole conducted 2 spacewalks totaling 14 hours and 2 minutes, conducting upgrades to the space station's solar arrays. Is there anything this woman can't do? The crew splashed down safely in their Dragon spacecraft off the coast of Tampa, Florida on Saturday, March 11th, 2023, completing NASA's 5th commercial crew rotation mission to the International Space Station. Colonel Mann is the first Native American woman from NASA to go to space. She is registered with the Wailaki of the Round Valley Indian tribes. I am delighted to welcome Nicole Anapu Mann, Colonel in the U.S. Marine Corps and NASA astronaut, to the stage this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I can't tell you how incredible it is to be back on planet Earth and here in Roanoke Park. I have such fond memories of growing up in Roanoke Park, and this community is such a big part of who I am today. So thank you for coming. I'm excited to share my journey with you and some of my experiences. NASA has helped me put together a video that is a summary of my mission on board the space station. And after that, we'll have a chance to have a conversation and learn a little bit about how I went from being a little girl in Roanoke Park to an astronaut in outer space. So let's start with the most exciting part, and that's what it's like to leave the planet and live and work in space for 5.5 months. Let's start the video. I'm not touching it.
And there they are. The astronauts of Crew 5 taking their first steps outside as they head to the pad. There they go. The rocket recline. There it is.
I like the way they did it kind of in coordination.
And here we go, the first 2 astronauts to board Crew Dragon. On the left, Josh Cassada, and on the right, Commander Nicole Mann. And here come our second 2 astronauts, mission specialists Koichi Wakata and Anna Kikina.
Special thanks on behalf of all the crew to our family and friends. It is your love and support that help make dreams come true. Now let's do this. Crew 5 displays are configured for launch.
3, 2, 1. Ignition. Engines full power. And liftoff.
Stage 2 Alpha.
Stage separation confirmed. Copy. 2 Alpha.
And there is separation.
Dragon separation confirmed.
On Crew 5, call this little guy our free fall indicator. We're here to tell you there's plenty of gravity up here. In fact, that's what's keeping us in orbit right now.
The moon in the farthest portion of your screen there, the furthest back circle, Dragon in the middle, and the International Space Station in the closest field of view, of course, with our pale blue dot underneath.
E6 on the big loop, contact and soft capture complete. Attenuation in progress.
Here we come through. First one through the hatch is going to be Nicole Mann, commander of Dragon. Next one through the hatch is Josh Cassada, the pilot of Dragon. Koichi Wakata of JAXA coming through the hatch. And last but not least, Anna Kikina of Roscosmos just entered the International Space Station.
Okay, so now that we were finally on board the space station, it was time for us to get to work. The primary objective is science in this microgravity laboratory. A lot of the science that we do is on our own human bodies and how space affects us. Here you can see I'm riding a bike with no seat, and I have a lot of sensors connected to me. We're seeing how the cardiovascular system changes in space. And Koichi here is looking at some tests to your cognitive ability in space. Of course, protecting astronauts from radiation is a prime concern, and so we have a lot of experiments to collect some of that data. This is really cool. We grew plants in space. And not only did we grow them, but then we harvested the seeds. These seeds will then be planted again in space along with seeds from Earth, and we'll see the difference in the epigenetic changes of these plants from being in microgravity. Some technology development is astrobees, which are little flying robots that navigate off of each other. And in the module, the future concept is that we will have humans and robots working together in space and eventually on the lunar surface. We're also looking at long-duration missions eventually to Mars and sustained presence on the moon. And so here I'm growing different types of yeast and yogurt. We're looking at ways that we can supplement the astronauts' diet. So beyond just the freeze-dried food and thermal stabilized food, we need to supplement our nutrients. We also grew little dwarf tomatoes in space. And these are incredible because when you pull down the bellows, you can smell the leaves and the tomatoes. And when you're in space, that's so amazing. So not only are we doing this for nutrients, but there's really a big psychological effect to seeing these plants in space as well. We looked at different types of light and fertilizers. This is Biofabrication Facility, one of my favorites. We are literally 3D printing human cells in space. Because we're in microgravity, the cells can be printed in a higher quality than you can on Earth. There's no density gradients, no thermal gradients. In fact, this last summer, they successfully printed a human meniscus for the knee. And so the future concept is to print full organs in space. Now, when we're on board, we had the opportunity to conduct 5 spacewalks. This is the robotic arm. It's used to assist in a spacewalk and also to capture cargo vehicles. You can see the shoulder is attached to the space station, the elbow is out in space, and then the wrist is free to move around. And you fly this from inboard or inside the space station. So the first 3 spacewalks were a series, and Josh and Frank went out the door for these spacewalks. You can see them exiting the airlock here out into the vacuum of space. Their objective was to install new solar arrays on the space station. So Josh is here on the end. You can see he's on the end of the robotic arm, and he's holding onto the IROSA. I'm with Koichi, and I'm flying that robotic arm. Now, that new solar array weighs 780 pounds. But in microgravity, it weighs nothing, although it has still a lot of mass, and therefore a lot of momentum when you get moving. So we have to be very careful and precise as we coordinate the movement. Once they docked the solar array, they rolled it out, and you can see the new solar array is much smaller than the legacy solar array, which is behind it, but it provides 30% more power. And those were very successful spacewalks. So now it was time for Koichi and I to go out the door. We did a series of 2 spacewalks in order to install some
Koichi, you are
support
go
structures.
to egress the airlock. Once you've egressed, turn on your HECA.
Here's Koichi coming out. These support structures are for IROSAs that were installed later this summer. Here I am coming out of the airlock, and I just want to note how many tethers and cables and everything is around it, how they float everywhere in microgravity. It's important that everything is tethered down and locked in before you move anything. Of course, you don't want to lose anything in space, and you don't want to lose yourself. I have this huge bag attached to me. It's about the same size as me. It's 180 pounds, and you can see it swinging around on that BRT. Again, there's no weight, but that momentum is absolutely incredible. Koichi and I worked together to install this triangle, and then we had some interference with the mechanical hardware on board station. Fortunately, we have a huge team of people on the ground to support these missions. The team worked together to find troubleshooting techniques. You can see here I am by the legacy solar array. My feet are in what's called an APFR, so I can go hands-free and work. And then you can see the bag floating to the right.
Okay, talk is good.
Copy. Great work. I'll have PGT settings for you next. Let me know when you're ready.
So the team worked on the ground, these troubleshooting techniques.
Oh, now it's in.
Okay.
Wow, that worked.
And it was multiple hours where we didn't think that it was going to work. So when we finally got that strut installed, everybody was cheering. On the ground, in space, it was a huge team effort, and just a great example of when we all work together collectively, how much we can accomplish. So then it's time for Koichi and I go back in the door, but of course we wanted to take a couple last photos to commemorate the mission. Shortly after that, we actually had a problem on board space station. The Soyuz spacecraft, which is from Russia, got hit by a micrometeorite. Now, we were okay inside. The micrometeorite hit an external cooling loop on the Soyuz, and so you can see that cooling fluid being ejected into the vacuum of space. So the spacecraft was not safe enough to return the astronauts. We took Frank's seat liner from the Russian spacecraft, took out a bunch of struts and cargo from my spacecraft, and installed his seat in case he needed a ride home if we had an emergency. Again, a great example of working with our international partners on the ground to find a solution. Of course, there's a lot of maintenance on space stations. Some of it is planned maintenance. However, if something breaks, like the toilet here, then you're the plumber on board. You're also the electrician and the IT person, and so you're prepared and you're trained across the board to work on any of these maintenance devices. Sometimes we are upgrading. This is a 4-bed CO2 scrubber, and here Koichi and I are upgrading some of the components. There's always a camera on us, and usually we're talking to a crew that's on the ground, and that's who I'm waving at here, and they're helping us work through this maintenance activity. Sometimes it's really unplanned. This is Josh and I in the airlock and one of our spacesuits for spacewalks. And that little thing that Josh is holding onto is a fan pump separator, a critical component to your life support in that spacesuit. It was never intended to be worked on in space, and there was a lot of little washers and little nuts that tried to escape, but we were successful. And here Frank is installing a glove box for some material science work. So we live up there for generally 6 months, and you need a lot of supplies. All of your food, all of your clothing, all of the science comes up on cargo spacecraft. Our first one was the SS Sally Ride, which is NG-18. And here again, I was flying that robotic arm, but this time to capture the spacecraft. And then the ground takes control, and they dock it to the space station. So here's the arm coming out, but you can see the solar array on the far side of the screen there has not been deployed. So we thought we were actually going to lose this spacecraft on its journey to the space station because it couldn't get the power that it needs from the sun. Fortunately, again, the huge team on the ground were able to troubleshoot, shut down some power systems, and still make the mission successful. Unfortunately, we lost some of the science, but the rest of the supplies came to space station. We also had a SpaceX cargo vehicle come on board. This one's a little different. It's a next generation technology, and this spacecraft autonomously docks with the space station. So as an astronaut on board, you're monitoring the displays, and you can send it away if something looks wrong, but other than that, it does it all by itself. Once the cargo is on board, it's an all-hands effort to get all of the bags out of the spacecraft and put everything away. It's like moving, but times 50. Now, life on station is pretty fun. We work out 2.5 hours a day. If you didn't, you would lose muscle mass and bone density. That weightlifting machine uses vacuum tubes to provide resistance. This is a treadmill, which is on the side of the wall, and I just wear a harness and bungees that hold you down. Eating in space is fun, and kids, in space, it is the one place where you're allowed to play with your food. This is just Cheerios. So Cheerios and powdered milk, and then you inject water to it, squish it up, and then you eat it. You can see the Cheerios just stick to my spoon. Because there's no gravity, the surface tension will hold it there. We drink water and coffee out of these little bags, but sometimes it's fun just to squirt the water into the air, and then you can still drink it that way. Now, sometimes you have to be careful. If you open this bag, this is a bag of chocolate-covered espresso beans or crackers or something, I mean, it makes a mess. It just goes everywhere. So you get used to kind of keeping track of everything in space, and a lot of times we all eat together, so you kind of help each other out by collecting food. Tortillas are king in space. Space food is not bad, but here this is just tortillas, rice, and some meat, and you can wrap anything in a tortilla, and it tastes delicious. My sister sent up stuff for a charcuterie board, and I used honey to try to keep everything down, but it still floated away. So, of course, we spent holidays in space, and it's important that we get together as a crew and celebrate, enjoy our meals, and have some fun while we're up there. People often ask about sleeping in space. There's 4 bedrooms, left, right, on the bottom, and overhead. I slept overhead. And you can see my sleeping bag here, which is blue, is just bungeed to the wall. And you hop in there, and I just put one bungee around my waist, and then you just float. It's the most comfortable sleep that I've ever had in my entire life. I absolutely miss it. Okay, physics is super cool in space. This is just water. So this is water that I squirted out onto my hands, and you can see it makes like a web in between my fingers. Your hands feel like they're submerged in a bucket of water, but it's really just a thin layer that's on your hands. So of course we squirted a huge ball of water and then put some food coloring inside of it to see what would happen. Then we decided to pop an Alka-Seltzer inside, and you can see the bubbles. They're growing and little pieces of water will be ejected away. Of course, the next logical thing is to smash your face into the ball of water. If you can see it, it creates that thin film all on my face. Now, I forgot that I put Alka-Seltzer in there, and it went right up my nose. Conservation of angular momentum. This was super fun. So you can see Josh clearly has more mass than I do. And here, Koichi is spinning a little bit fast, or I'm spinning very fast. Koichi's barely spinning, and yes, you get incredibly dizzy. But when I let go, notice that I'll keep spinning. Unless I hit something or touch something, you're gonna continue to spin. So it was a lot of fun just experimenting with some of the physics. We also looked at conservation of linear momentum. So you can see this water jug has a lot more mass, than we do. So we decided Josh would hook his feet on a handrail and then chuck the water jug at me to see what would happen. It was a pretty powerful force. Just like you see ice skaters do, it was incredible. When I put my arms out, I almost stopped. And when I put them back together, you just pick up so fast. We always joked that I was small, so they could put me in the middle of the module, and if I couldn't grab onto anything, I'd be stuck there forever. But fortunately, I had good crewmates, and so that didn't happen. Koichi's a huge baseball player. So in space, you can play baseball by yourself. You can pitch the baseball, and if you fly very fast, you can hit it. And get yourself out. So we had a lot of fun. Up there. One of our favorite pastimes is looking at the cupola. The cupola is this module. There's 7 windows. It's on the belly of space station, and it faces planet Earth. Now here I'm inside the space station, and I'm bringing you down to the cupola to look out the windows at the planet. This module is used for Earth observation. We take photographs of weather, hurricanes, typhoons, volcanic eruptions, even erosion. But it's also an incredible place just to sit there and view our incredible planet. Now, during the day, Earth is very bright, and so you can't see any stars. And when you look into the vacuum of space, it is the blackest of black you've ever seen, total emptiness. But as you come down and you pick up the planet, you see these incredible blues and whites. You can see the green of the land, and you can see that small horizon. Now, we're traveling at 17,500 miles per hour. So we go around the planet every 90 minutes. That means a sunrise and a sunset every 45 minutes. It's absolutely incredible. What I once thought as far off distant lands would pass underneath you in a matter of minutes. This is Africa, and you can see the beautiful reds. At night, you can start to pick up the stars. But notice that line around the planet. That's our atmosphere. It's incredible to think that that atmosphere is the only thing that's keeping all humans on Earth alive from the vacuum of space. It really drives home how fragile our planet is and how important it is that we protect our planet. At night, you can see the city lights, and you can see lightning jumping from cloud top to cloud top. And we got some great time lapse of the northern lights. The planet has never looked so alive. And unfortunately, The pictures in the video can't do it justice, the vibrance of the colors.
There we go, inside Node 2, looking at the hatchway. We can see all 4 of our crew members actually suited up and ready to go.
All hooks open.
All hooks open, depart burn 1.
Duke and Crew 5, magnificent sunset departure. You guys look great. Great job up here. We're going to miss you. Godspeed.
Obviously, that beautiful bright light in the middle, that's Crew Dragon Endurance coming home after 157 days in space.
Main chute descent rate nominal.
And as you just saw, splashdown of Crew 5.
6 Dragon splashdown names have been released.
Dragon, brace for capsule lift.
And there it is, side hatch open.
Dragon Endurance, on behalf of SpaceX, welcome home.
So it was an incredible journey. Thank you. It's great to be back. I don't know what's next for me. Hopefully another trip to either the International Space Station or potentially to the moon under the Artemis program. There are so many opportunities now for human exploration. Whatever role I play, I'm just really excited to be a part of it. So I'd like to introduce our next segment. I'm back. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So that was just the first half of our conversation with Nicole. We have more.
And in the second part of the event, we get to have a casual conversation with Nicole on the stage, and we get to ask her some more fun questions. And I don't know about you, but I never thought I would want to be an astronaut, but suddenly I want to be an astronaut after seeing that. So joining me on stage next is going to be a member of the Kaiser Permanente team. Her name is Dr. Patricia Heiseroth. I hope I said that correctly, Heiseroth. And what's really special about this doctor, I just learned it backstage. 15 weeks on the job and the very first female to hold this position, and it is physician-in-chief for the Santa Rosa service area. How awesome is that? So Dr. Trish is going to move us into that next portion of the next portion of the evening and introduce our moderator. Here she is.
Thank you, Carlene. I'm already inspired, and I can't wait to hear more from Nicole as we transition into this conversation piece of the program. So welcome, everyone. I'm thrilled to be here. My name is Dr. Trish Heiseroth. As you heard, I'm the new physician-in-chief at the Kaiser Permanente Santa Rosa Medical Center. On behalf of Abhishek Dosi and our entire Kaiser Permanente Santa Rosa team, we are just so honored to be a major partner with the Press Democrat and bring these inspiring women to the stage. When it comes to women's health, Kaiser Permanente recognizes that the healthcare journey of women and all individuals with a uterus are multifaceted, unique, and dynamic. We pride ourselves in supporting women throughout all cycles of their life and building healthy families through our nationally recognized maternity care. We've delivered over 1,100 babies to date just this year. And we're passionate about providing equitable care, where we ensure everything we do touches every corner of our community, especially those most vulnerable. Representation matters. to us here at Kaiser Permanente. And this evening, I do feel the great significance of being the first female physician-in-chief for our medical center. And leading the largest physician group in Sonoma County, where we administer care to over 50% of our population. Thank you. I'm humbled to be part of this program, and where we not only get to hear from our incredible female astronaut, but also the first Native American woman in space. Being a test pilot, like that wasn't cool enough. Sign me up, I'm ready to go. Although I think I definitely need bags of coffee. This portion of the evening will be moderated by Dr. Lynn Kaminsky, Professor of Physics and Astronomy and Director of the Edion STEM Learning Center at Sonoma State University. We are thrilled to have Dr. Kaminsky moderate, as she's the perfect fit with her 35 years tenure at Sonoma State. She holds a PhD in physics from MIT, is the author of over 225 research papers, founder of SSU's Edion STEM learning program, and is currently working on a project for NASA's Neurodiversity Network. Phew, did I tell you there were some truly exceptional leaders tonight? So without further ado, it is my distinct pleasure to invite our esteemed moderator, Dr. Kaminsky and Nicole, back to the stage.
Thank you. Well, hi, everybody. On behalf of Sonoma State, I'm the representative of Sonoma State. I'd like to thank the people that brought all of you here, the Press Democrat, Summit Bank, Kaiser Permanente, and of course, my favorite, Oliver's. But I'm just really thrilled to be here and to be able to speak to you and to Nicole. So I have some questions, and I also have some questions from the audience that I'm going to be asking. So my first question is, Petaluma claims you as one of its own, but you went to Rancho. So they have bragging rights to you too. Can you tell us about teachers, since I'm a teacher, that inspired you and led you on your career path that you...
Absolutely. It was incredible. So I grew up in Roanoke Park and in Pengrove, but all of my schooling was in Roanoke Park. And it's such an incredible community. I think living in this area, you're exposed to so many different opportunities, so many different diverse groups of people. And I think that was important when I was young and trying to figure out what I wanted to do, because I didn't have it all figured out. I did not know that I wanted to be an astronaut. I knew early on that I wanted to, serve in the military and be a part of something that was just bigger than I am. And my teachers really helped facilitate that. Everything that I was interested in, math, science, I played soccer, all of my community supported me. The teachers really throughout all of this education continued to push and to inspire and to help me along my way when I stumbled. So for all my teachers, I know there's a couple out there, thank you so much. And for all the teachers today, thank you for doing what you do to inspire the young generation. It's so important.
You're here. So I know a few astronauts, but they're all scientists. You're a pilot astronaut. And before you became an astronaut, you joined the Marine Corps. So that's not a very typical choice for young women. What influenced you to join the Marine Corps and become a test pilot?
So there was a lot of influence in the area. My father served in the military, and being in the military was something that I felt very passionate about. But I knew it was important to get a great education as well. And I played soccer. So I started looking at the service academies. And really the Naval Academy for me was the best of all those worlds. I could serve in the military, I could play soccer, and I could study mechanical engineering. So off I went to Annapolis, and then decided that I definitely wanted to be a Marine after the influence of people. There was a sense of honor and tradition that just resonated with me as Marines. But It wasn't until the summer before my senior year, I got a ride in the back seat of an F-18, which is the same jets that the Blue Angels fly. That's when I knew, okay, yes, I want to be a Marine and I want to be a fighter pilot.
So tell me about how you learned to fly.
Well, I learned at flight school T-34s, which is like a Cessna, but with much more power, was my first exposure to flying. So it was through military training in Pensacola, Florida.
Wow. So what was it like flying combat missions for the Marines in Iraq and Afghanistan? It sounds pretty scary.
Yes, I did 2 deployments off the USS Enterprise to Iraq and Afghanistan. And in one word, intense, I think I would use to describe it. When I was getting ready to launch to space, I was thinking about, is this going to be similar to a military deployment? I'm gone from 6 months, separated from my family, isolated, and it was not. It was very different. Yes, you're away from your family, you're connected, but during a combat deployment, you are seeing the absolute worst of humanity. You've trained, you are defending your country, you're doing your duty, but nobody wants to go to war. It's horrible. Contrast, though, with the mission on board the International Space Station. Now I am working with the absolute best of the world, the best of humanity. It's incredible. On the space station, we have Americans, Japanese, Canadians, Russians, Europeans, and we're working with the mission control centers throughout the world, the scientists, the investigators throughout the world. It was just such an incredible and such an empowering feeling to be a part of that mission. I think it really has the potential to unite us as humans in the world by exploring space.
So you're not only, yes, let's clap for exploring space. So you're not only a test pilot, but you were the commander of the mission. I mean, that's just an amazing thing. So there are not that many astronauts that have that kind of flight experience that you've had. So how is being the commander of a NASA mission different than commanding something for the Marines, for example?
Operationally, it's different, but when it comes down to commanding or leading people, people are people. And so the Marine Corps gave me a great foundation in learning how to live and work with people in a group. Not only leadership, but followership as well. Not only taking care of your team, but also taking care of yourself. And I found that to be very important as a leader for SpaceX. It also taught me a great lesson about compartmentalization. And that's something that I apply every day, to be honest. When you're flying off an aircraft carrier, you must be incredibly focused on the task that you're doing. That's the most important thing at that moment. When you launch, you accelerate to 500 knots at 500 feet, and you go through checks of all of your systems of your aircraft. Then you get gas before going in country. When you're in country and you're supporting the Marines or other troops on the ground, you've got to be laser focused on exactly what you're doing and not worried about coming back to the aircraft carrier and landing in maybe bad weather at night on a pitching deck. And when you're coming back to land, you need to be laser focused on landing, and you can't think about what just happened. It's the same thing when you're in space. It's the same thing with life if you apply it that way, right? When you are giving your son a bath, focus on giving your son a bath and be present and be in the moment. When you're working or you're at school or you're at your job, focus on doing that. When it's time to relax and have a good time, relax and have a good time.
So one of the questions that we got from the audience is sort of a good follow-up for that one. How does leadership work in space?
It works the same as it does on planet Earth. I'm here to tell you that. There are many differences. But the interesting thing is that there are different people from very different backgrounds. And of course, we see that. You see the diversity of the astronaut corps, and it's a reflection of the diversity in our world. And that is so important. People bring different strengths. It's important that you recognize people's differences, though, and you honor those. It helps when you're working together as a team. In our crew, we had Koichi Wakata. He's a Japanese astronaut. He's absolutely incredible. He has a different, grew up with a different culture, a different way of communicating and going about things. And so it's important that you recognize that. And as we all work together as a group, we talked a little bit about self-reflection and understanding maybe what are your characteristics when you get nervous or you feel overwhelmed? How do you respond? How does your crewmate respond? Maybe you can recognize that and help them out a little more because they're having a day that's maybe a trying day. And then it's important to recognize, even as a leader, okay, you know what, I need a break. I need to take 15 minutes and I need to go look out the window of the cupola at planet Earth. And I did that quite often.
So speaking of looking at the Earth, do you think that you responded differently to looking at the Earth because of your native background compared to astronauts from other countries? Or was that just a common humanity thing that everybody is so awed by the view of the Earth?
You know, I've asked a lot of astronauts what that felt like, that first view, and I wondered quite often what that first view would look like. And I think although everybody is so different, I think it is a human thing to be off of the planet, to be in space, and to be looking back literally at everybody that's alive in the entire universe in your field of view. For me, it was two very different emotions. You know, one is just this incredible awe of the planet and all of its majesty. It's just incredible. And then, like I talked about, when you look at the vacuum of space, you feel so small and so vulnerable. And so it was very interesting to have kind of those two feelings at the same time.
Yeah, I'm always struck by how thin the atmosphere is. And of course,
it's just tiny.
You know, as a scientist, it's very worrisome what we're doing to the atmosphere.
Yes, yes.
So, okay. So going back to the beginning of your astronaut days, one of the questions that we got from the audience was, how did you react when you first learned that you were selected to be an astronaut?
So it's a long process, and it takes about 1.5 years, and you go through multiple rounds of interviews down at NASA. And when you're selected to become an astronaut, they call you on the phone. And so I heard, okay, people are getting called, and they call you and they tell you either no, when you're in the final round, we're not selecting you this year, or would you like to come down to Houston to be an astronaut? So I was at work actually in the Marine Corps and turning over my job, and like most government buildings, there were no windows and very bad cell coverage. So I ran as hard as I could, like almost pushing people out of the way to a window that I knew I could get coverage because it said government, block number on my phone. And it was the flight operations director that called and said, "We'd love if you came down to Houston to be an astronaut." The next thing she said, though, "You can't tell anybody." Right? How are you supposed to do that? But you can tell your husband, you can tell your parents. So I told my husband, he was thrilled. I told my mother, "Mom, I'm moving to Houston." And she goes, when I became a fighter pilot, she made me promise not to become an astronaut, but I feel like that's okay, right? Mom, it was okay, right? It's the one time you don't have to listen to your mom.
A shout out to Nicole's parents who are sitting over here with President Lee. So then you had to move to Houston.
Then I moved to Houston.
That's the part they don't tell you, They don't stress too much about the joys of being an astronaut. So what was the hardest thing that you had to learn in NASA astronaut training camp?
I'd say the hardest is definitely the spacewalk training. But it's also the most enjoyable and incredible and frustrating thing they've ever done. The suit that we wear, when you're in that suit, you weigh about 450 pounds. So on Earth, in the training suit, you do weigh that much. But we have this huge pool called the Neutral Buoyancy Lab. It's 40 feet deep, and it's got a life-size mock-up of the International Space Station. You go in there in the suit, and the team of divers use weights and foam to try to make you neutrally buoyant and simulate what it's like in microgravity. It's just incredible training, but that suit is pressurized to 4.3 PSID here on Earth. And so every time you move your arms or your hands, you're working against the pressure of that suit. And a training run is 6 hours. So it feels like a marathon, the amount of physical effort that it takes. And the surprising part is the mental effort as well. You find yourselves incredibly mentally fatigued by the end of it because the operations are so critical, and keeping all those tethers that I showed you and keeping those not tangled and also connected in the right order is crucial to being successful.
Yes, I have heard about the big pool.
The big pool, yes.
So the model of the space station is actually inside the pool.
Absolutely, and they do a great
Wow.
job. They mock up every wire tie, every cable, every handrail. And so when you actually execute a spacewalk in space, you can almost just hand over hand and go through it. So it's incredible training.
Wow. So tell us a little bit more about your life on the space station. What were the most difficult parts of living so closely with an international crew?
Honestly, it wasn't difficult. And I think the reason is because we do a lot of training and a lot of discussions about living and working together on a team. We call it expeditionary behavior, which is a little bit of what we talked about, taking care of yourself, taking care of your teammates, communication, conflict resolution. In fact, in the first 2 weeks, we debriefed every evening after dinner, and we just talked, okay, crew, how'd the day go? Operationally, how did things go? Relationship-wise, how are things doing? And you could easily identify something. I mean, you need to become comfortable giving feedback and receiving feedback, but you can bring up something that's maybe an issue or bothering you early, very easy, and have it resolved, and then you don't run into an uncomfortable situation. And so our crew was well trained on that, and it was really enjoyable.
And did you train with them for quite a while before you actually got launched?
We trained the 4 of us together for about a year before we launched.
Okay.
But already on board were 2 cosmonauts, which are Russian astronauts, and Frank Rubio, who's an American astronaut.
Who's still there.
Who's still there.
Right, yes,
Because of
setting
that
the record.
Soyuz leak that I showed you, he got extended an additional 6 months. So he comes home in 7 days, but he's been up there for over a year. And we had never trained together. But we all just fit together and just worked, and because there is great standardization across the training platforms, even somebody you haven't directly trained with, you could come together and work well as a crew.
Well, I think we saw a lot of the fun parts in the video. I was, of course, personally impressed by the physics experiments. But hopefully most of my physics students that are in the audience would be able to predict what would happen when he threw that big water jug at you.
I'm worried about the problems that you're going to come up with on next week's homework set.
Well, for excitement, it's pretty hard to compete with commanding a mission to the space station. So where do you see your career headed now that you have so many incredible accomplishments?
I'm not sure. There's so many opportunities. And so now I'll be back in the office. I'll get a chance to support the astronauts that are currently in space as a capsule communicator when you're talking to them from mission control, developing new spacewalks. That choreography needs to be developed here on the planet. And then I'll be working on some of the future systems. So we have a new suit, a new spacesuit for space station. And we're also, under the Artemis program, going back to the moon. So Artemis 2 is scheduled to launch the end of next year, and those astronauts will go around the moon and they'll test out the new life support systems of Orion. Now, future missions will land on the surface of the moon. So I'll be working with companies in developing some of the habitats, some of the rovers, and some of the suits that we'll use for moonwalks.
Do you think there's a chance the next generation of spacesuits will weigh less than the current generation?
I don't know that they'll weigh less, but they'll have more sizes. Smaller sizes would be good. We're definitely baking that in. And they'll also have a much greater mobility and visibility. We have found that that is critical to just being efficient when you're working outside the door.
Well, we have a good follow-up question from the audience. What missions do you think will be possible if we look out 50 to 100 years?
Oh, good one. I've not been asked that before. So I think the concept, space station is on contract now till 2030. So at some point that will deorbit, but some modules will come off of there. I think you'll see smaller modules, laboratories that are government, perhaps probably commercial industry as well, that will be in low Earth orbit, right? And then beyond low Earth orbit, in cislunar space, we'll have sustained humans living on the surface of the moon. We'll also have, which is in current development now, called Gateway. So it's kind of like Station, but a lot smaller and human-tended instead of people living on board the entire time. And we'll launch from Gateway down to the surface of the moon and work with robotics. Eventually, maybe that is our launching platform to Mars. And so I think down the road, will we be living on Mars? Will we have sustained human presence on the surface of Mars? I hope so. I think it's certainly in the realm of possibilities.
Well, one of the mentors for my neurodiversity project that's been funded by NASA is Dr. Pascal Lee, who goes to the Arctic every year to Devon Island to test out new types of spacesuits, new types of locomotion. And one of the things that the intern that worked with him, who's now a student here at Sonoma State, worked on for his summer project was a multiple-use tool to be able to do geology experiments on the moon. Apparently, on the original moon missions, they had like 7 different tools that the astronauts had to carry around. And so he was interested in, can you design a multi-tool for an astronaut?
That's amazing.
So what would you think of
that would be
kind
great.
of an evolution?
We have, in the neutral buoyancy lab that I spoke about where we train for spacewalks, they have now installed what simulates regolith and a lunar surface. And people will be down there in the suit testing out different types of tools and to see how that works together in the suit. And it's really cool because sometimes you're doing the spacewalk training and you look over and you see all these little flying robots because you're going to have rovers that are working with you as your team.
Yeah, that's really cool. Well, let's just switch a little bit to education because, I am an educator. So here at Sonoma State, we have a variety of programs that are funded by NASA, mostly to me, that do education and public outreach. But also, shout out to Matt Clark, my colleague, who's got the Soundscapes project. What advice would you give to Sonoma State students or future STEM students who want to follow your path to a NASA career?
There are a lot of different paths to working at NASA, and NASA is a huge government agency that not only does human exploration, but also studies climate change, has an aviation department, and of course, down in Pasadena, JPL has the rovers that are on Mars. So there's so many different opportunities, whether you're a scientist, an engineer, a physician, to be involved and a part of NASA. The astronauts are just one little tiny piece of that. There's a huge team of people that help to make everything possible. I think specifically for somebody that's interested in becoming an astronaut, again, there's not just one path. I went the fighter pilot, test pilot path, but really only about 25% of the astronaut corps are military. The rest are civilians and scientists, engineers, doctors, educators as well. And so the one thing that I've noticed that all astronauts have in common is that they absolutely loved what they did before they became an astronaut. And that tells me that they have all followed their passions in life, the things that they actually love to do. And they've been successful because they were passionate and loved what they did. And you may have, your path all figured out, or you may be like me, and you may be figuring out as you go along the way. And you will stumble along the way, and you will need help, and you should ask for help, whether that be your community, your friends, your family are there to support you along the way. And you may change that path, and you may change your end goal. It's all okay. Don't put too much pressure, I would say, on yourself to say, I need to go from here to there in a straight line. It's just not how life works.
And I think that's probably common for women in particular, that you don't set out trying to do something that's highly technical. I certainly never grew up wanting to be a physicist. So, I certainly can relate to that experience. But you were supposed to encourage everyone to study physics.
Physics. Physics is cool.
All right. Okay. Well, we have to ask the question.
You're going to ask the question?
I'm going to ask the question. We've been joking about this for quite a while. What's it like to use the bathroom in space?
You asked the question. I thought you weren't going to ask the question.
But everyone wants to know.
Okay.
And we had several people that wrote that on the cards.
It's not too bad. Number one is actually pretty easy because you have, just a funnel that you put against your body, and there's a little bit of suction on the funnel, and so everything just goes in that correct direction as long as you're aiming properly, right? Number two, though, is a little more difficult. Step one, though, is pants off, like all the way off. You don't want to make a mess and soil your pants. Step two is gloves. You can't wash your hands in space. You need to put gloves on. And then aim is also very important. You're aiming into a little cylinder that has a bag in it. There's some airflow to help everything go in the right direction. But if it touches a hard surface, it's going to make a mess. So, it's not as easy. It's not relaxing. you know?
Well, the sleeping bag situation seemed pretty relaxing.
The sleeping bag's great. It is, yes, yes.
That seemed like a good one. And so then once you got back to Earth, was it really difficult to be able to go to sleep, and you started to feel all your aches and pains again? And
Yes, yes. It was easy to go to the restroom. That was awesome. That's probably the one good thing, the one thing I like about gravity. The rest of it, no, I'll take micro G any day. Yes, in space, your neck never hurts, your back doesn't hurt, you never have to roll over, your arms don't fall asleep. You're just... Sometimes I would curl up, but a lot of times I would just sleep like that, and it was the absolute best.
well, it's making it sound more attractive to be an astronaut every day.
It'd be the most expensive sleep therapy ever, right?
Definitely. So then when you came back to Earth, how long did it take you to be able to really walk again?
It takes a little while. I mean, you saw everybody kind of pulls us out of the spacecraft, and you're super strong because you've been working out in space, but the little stabilizer muscles in your neck and your back and your hips, those guys have been asleep for a while. But your vestibular system is just out to lunch. You have no balance and no sense of up and down, and gravity is so heavy. Your head is so heavy. It's incredible. So you're exhausted, really. After about 3 hours after landing, though, we landed back at Houston, and we were able to walk off the plane, and people are nearby in case you stumble. And then at about 12 hours, you're feeling a lot better, but you're still pretty wobbly. I would say it took about 30 days to get all of my agility back. We have rehabilitation 2 hours every day for the first 45 days once you get home, and a team of trainers that get those little muscles back, and they kind of retrain your neuromuscular system. And there's this little agility course they would have us do, kind of running around corners and around circles. And I would, in the first few weeks, go to accelerate or decelerate and put in the wrong input, like not enough or too much, and you're falling over. It was kind of like a mess. But at the end of 30 days, I came around this cone, and my feet went, do, and I was like, yeah, feet, you're back. It was awesome. So it was like kind of recovering from an injury.
So I'm personally hoping that she's going to be the first woman on the moon. Does anybody want to vote for that? But human presence in space can be sort of controversial because, a lot of people think we should just send robots instead of people. Mm-hmm. So as a person who's been in space, what do you think the added value is of being a person in space and the whole human spaceflight program?
There's incredible added value. And we are seeing the development of robots and automation, like I talked about, that Cargo Dragon docks, and that's important. We're evolving technology from a technology perspective incredibly well. But it's interesting because as we develop that technology, where does the human fit into it? If I can build a spacecraft that can go to space and it can dock and it can land on the moon and do everything on its own, do I need the human on board? And if so, how do I incorporate the human? And so I think that's going to be the really interesting point as we develop these next spacecraft is how do we have human and machine work and interface together? We want to take human error out of the equation. That's going to make it as safe as possible. However, humans are still coding our computers. And so we even see today on Dragon spacecraft on the International Space Station where something goes wrong with the software, where some flag is not set and it gets hung up or the wrong thing happens. And so it's important at that point that the human can now come in, stop the automation, and influence the system. And where we find that balance, I don't know. I do see this as being humans and rovers together. For example, I talked like on the moon. Maybe I'm in a spacesuit, I'm walking, but maybe I have 10 rovers that I'm managing. We're not at the point yet where machines can take in the entire surrounding and make a decision based on experience. Maybe we'll be there someday, I don't know.
Yeah, well, at the rate artificial intelligence is progressing, it may be sooner than we'd like.
Questions. So let's make it a really good one, this last question, right?
No pressure.
Okay, all right, yes, no pressure here. Well, I'm just going to close with a question from the audience because I think this is a good one. Yeah. So do you speak to local Native American girls to inspire them to follow their dreams?
Absolutely. I think it's important to communicate to all of the younger generation to inspire their dreams. I think personally, as being a Native American, I do feel a unique responsibility to communicate my journey, especially to Indigenous people. I'm from the Round Valley Indian tribes up in Covelo, and I'll actually be headed up there on Saturday to speak at Indian Days.
Well, I'd like to thank you very much. This has been a fun conversation.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you again, Nicole Mann, for coming back home and sharing tonight with us. Thank you, Summit State Bank, Kaiser Permanente, Oliver's, and Healdsburg Lumber. Safe travels, everybody, and remember, we can reach for the stars, right? Nicole has shown us that anything is possible. Good night.